talked me out of starting a rocket company because they thought it was crazy, and one friend of mine made me watch a video of rockets blowing up. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energy is on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. You try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value. Now, there are cases, of course, where people will do bad things in order to achieve profit, but that's actually quite unusual. I mean, because usually the rules are set up mostly correctly, like not completely, but mostly correctly. Yeah, I figured like I was willing to spend half the money that I got from PayPal, with no expectation of return.
Right.
Because I thought this was just something that was pretty important, and yeah, I'm like, it seems like I could spend half the money made on PayPal on this, and it'd be if that got NASA a bigger budget and resulted in us going to Mars, that would be a pretty good outcome.
And when your friends came or your family came up to you and said, look, there's nations that can't do this. You're a guy, but you have some resources. What did you say or do or think?
Well, so I had a lot of friends of mine try to talk me out of starting a rocket company because they thought it was crazy, and one friend of mine made me watch a video of rockets blowing up. And there were just lots of people that thought it was a really crazy idea, and there was some people that had tried to start rocket companies, not succeeded, and they tried to talk me out of it. And but the thing is that the premise for talking me out of it was, well, we think you're going to lose the money that you invest. I was like, well, that was my expectation anyway, so I don't really mind if I lose. I mean, I might, but I mean, it's not like I was trying to figure out the rank ordered best way to invest money, and on that basis, chose space.
Right.
It's not like something bad is bound to happen if you give it enough time. And civilization has been around for such a very short period of time that these time scales seem like very long, but on a evolutionary time scale, they're very short. A million years on evolutionary time scale is really not much. And Earth's been around for 4.5 billion years. So that's a very tiny amount of time, really. But for us, that would be. I mean, can you imagine if human civilization continued at anything remotely like the current pace of technology advancement for 1 million years? Where would we be?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're either extinct or on a lot of planets.
Yes, we should.
There's amount of will in the United States for space exploration, because the United States is essentially a nation of explorers. I mean, it's a distillation of the human spirit of exploration. So of course, it was quite silly of me to think that people lack motivation. But what people don't want to think is that, okay, sending people to Mars is going to be so expensive that they'll have to give up like healthcare or something. They're not going to do that. So it's got to be. It's got to be that going to Mars is not going to cause some meaningful drop in their standard of living. So if it's like maybe 0.25% or 0.5% of GDP, something like that is palatable. anyway, so I thought, okay, it's not really going to maybe matter that much if I do this mission, because what really matters is having a way. So I was wrong. I thought there wasn't enough will, but there actually was plenty of will if people thought there was a way. So then I said, okay, well, I need to work on the way.
Like, I don't even know how to start trying to make a rocket company.
Well, neither did I really. And in fact, the first 3 launches failed. So it's not as though it was like, spot on. It's like, did not hit the bullseye.
But even getting to the point that you're launching rockets, I don't even know how do you get there? And like, what did you do on, like, one, how did you decide, and then what did you do on day one? Like, who did you call, or did you write a plan? Did you start? I don't even know.
Yeah, actually, I mean, the origin of PayPal or rather, SpaceX is that I was trying to figure out why that we'd not sent any people to Mars, because the obvious next step after Apollo was to send people to Mars. So, but what in fact happened was that we sent a few people to the Moon, and then we didn't send anyone after that to the Moon or Mars or anything. But if you'd asked people in 1969 what would 2013 look like, they would have said there'll be a base on the Moon. We would have at least sent some people to Mars, and maybe there'd even be a base on Mars. There'd be like orbiting space hotels, and there'd be all this awesome stuff in space. And that's what people expected. And if you'd said, well, actually, the United States in 2013 will not be able to send anyone to orbit, but I tell you what will exist is that there'll be this device in your pocket that's like the size of it's more than a deck of cards, that has access to all the world's information, and you can talk to anyone on planet Earth. And even if you're like in some remote village somewhere, as long as there's something called the internet, they wouldn't know what that means, of course. Then you'd be able to communicate to anyone instantly and have access to all of humanity's knowledge. It's a bit like bullshit. There's no way that's going to be
right.
And yet we all have that, and space is not happening. So I was trying to figure out like what was the deal here, and this was 2001. It was just a friend of mine asked me what I'm going to do after PayPal. And I said, well, I've always been interested in space, but I don't think there's anything that an individual could do in space because it's the province of government, usually large government. But I'm curious as to when we're going to send someone to Mars. So I went to the NASA website, tried to figure out like where's the place that tells you that, and I couldn't find that. So I thought, well, like, either I'm like bad at looking at the website, or they have a terrible website, because surely there must be a date.
That should be a big date, yeah.
Like, this should be on the front page. And then I discovered actually that NASA had no plans to send people to Mars, or even really back to the Moon. So this was really disappointing. I thought, well, maybe this is a question of national will. Like, do we need to get people excited about space again, and try to get NASA a bigger budget, and then we would send people to Mars. And so I started researching the area, becoming more familiar with space, reading lots of books, and came up with this idea to do something called Mars Oasis, which was to send a small greenhouse with seeds and dehydrated gel. Upon landing, you hydrate the gel. You have green plants on a red background, and the public responds to precedents and superlatives. So it would be the first life on Mars, the furthest that life's ever traveled, and you'd have this money shot of green plants on a red background. So that seemed like it would get people pretty excited. So I started getting into this and trying to figure out, okay, well, can I afford to build the spacecraft? Because I had some money as a result of PayPal, but it had to fit within that budget. And I figured we had to do 2 missions, because if we only did one and it failed, then it might have like the opposite effect. But it was one of those things where I wasn't sure if success was one of the possible outcomes. And like it's difficult to bound that problem exactly and say, okay, I didn't think it would fail, but I wasn't sure that success was a possibility.
Okay. Yes.
And generally, you want to embark on something. It's desirable to figure out if success is at least one of the possibilities.
Right. Exactly.
Because for sure, failure is one of the possibilities.
Yes.
But ideally, you want to try to bracket it and say success is in the envelope of outcomes.
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite sure if that was the case. I mean, I think success on an academic level would have been quite likely because you can publish some useless paper, and most papers are pretty useless.
We have a few. Don't take offense. Sorry.
I mean,
we have
how many PhD papers are actually used by someone ever? I mean,
that's a good point.
percentage-wise, it's not good.
Yeah.
So it could have been one of those outcomes where you add some leaves to the tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that leaf is nope, it's not possible.
Right.
Like,
Right.
there goes 7 years of my life. So that was one path, and I was prepared to do that. But then the internet came along, and it was like, okay, the internet. I'm pretty sure success is one of the possible outcomes, and it seemed like I could either do a PhD and watch the internet happen, or I could participate and help build it in some fashion. Like I just couldn't stand the idea of watching it happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I decided to put things on hold and start an internet company, and then that was kind of we worked on internet like publishing software, maps and directions, yellow pages, kind of things, and we had as investors and customers the media companies, so like New York Times Company, Knight Ridder.
And this was just at the early stages. I mean, this was like late
95.
95. Oh, so it's really early stages. That's really out the gate. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then the reason we worked with the media companies is because we knew they had money. Like there was no advertising money in '95.
Right.
In fact, the idea of advertising the internet seemed like a ridiculous thing to people. Obviously, not so ridiculous anymore. But at the time, it seemed like a very unlikely proposition. And a lot of the media companies weren't even sure that they should be online.
Right.
Like, what's the point of that? If you think about the future, you want a future that's better than the past. And so if we had something like the Hyperloop, I think that would be like cool. Like you'd look forward to the day that was working, and it's something like that. Even if it only was in one place, from LA to San Francisco or New York to DC or something like that, then it would be cool enough that it would be like a tourist attraction, it would be like a ride or something.
Yeah.
So even if some of the initial assumptions didn't work out and the economics didn't work out quite as one expected, it would be like cool enough to be like, I want to journey that place just to ride on that thing. That would be pretty cool. And so that's, I think, how if you come up with a new technology, it should feel like that. You should really, like, if you told it to an objective person, would they look forward to the day that thing became available? And be like, it'd be pretty exciting to do something like that. Or an aircraft. Like I thought it was really disappointing when the Concorde was taken out of commission and there was no supersonic transport available. And of course, the 787 has had some issues. But the thing is, the 787, even in the best case scenario, is only a slightly better version of the 777. And it's like, okay, not that exciting.
So this is something that you are working on, and one day in the not too far future, or there's some plans or consultants involved or something. You've made some phone calls to Russia.
No, every now and then, like there's like it's sort of percolating away, and then I'm not actively thinking about it, but then there'll be some new element of that. I'll think, oh well, this would make it better.
Thanks for watching, my friend. You have seen best motivation video for 2021 for self-discipline and personal development with motivation music. And watch my another video for success and inspiration about Elon Musk and his SpaceX program.